What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Space Arena Ground Arena, where we cover Star Wars Unlimited from the ground up into space. Today, in Crapshoot here with another deck profile for A Lawless Time. This time, we are going to be looking at a green Qui-Gon Jinn Force deck. This deck reminds me a lot of one of my favorite Dragon Ball Super card game decks. Now, I'm not talking the current Fusion World soft reset nonsense. I'm talking like original, like 2016, 2017 Dragon Ball Super. I believe it's called Masters now. One of my favorite decks was a Goku's Lineage deck, and Qui-Gon Jinn doesn't do the same thing. He does a similar thing differently, but it reminds me of it. So, it's a fun deck, and we're gonna go over it piece by piece. Alrighty, so here we go. We're gonna get into it. Like always, have a little bit of an agenda. We'll go through the deck. I actually think the sauce is not called the sauce, but we'll get over there. Okay, so first off, what is Goku's Lineage? Goku's Lineage. Why are there Dragon Ball cards in this Star Wars video? Well, just to try to explain what Goku's Lineage was, is you would start with your 1-drop Bardock. There's a couple other 1-drops you could use that have the swap keyword. So this is a swap to Bardock. You swap with a Goku's Lineage tagged card with an energy cost of 2, and then you bounce the Bardock back to hand. And you would keep going up the chain and get until you got to your Height of Mastery, Son Goku, your 8 cost that you could swap into with ridiculous keywords. So you were bouncing little units to move up the chain to a bigger unit. Qui-Gon does it kind of backwards, where you're bouncing a bigger unit to play a smaller unit, but the swapping mechanic, and how in Goku's Lineage you were trying to get to your bomb, and you could even get to like the 7-drop ultimate one that if you hit, you won the game. The Qui-Gon's wanting to bounce units and to replay big units in the end game reminds me a lot of one of my favorite Dragon Ball Super decks. So I want to talk about it, and that was like the inspiration for this deck. So here is the deck as I currently have it constructed. We got 3 Gungi, 3 Jedi Consular, 3 Youngling Padawans, 2 Yoda Sabers, 3 3-drop Obi-Wan, 3 Max Rebo Bands, 3 Vernestras, 3 Beguile, 3 4-drop Ahsoka, 3 Captain Typho, 3 Protecting the Pod, 3 Queen Amidala, 2 Timely Reinforcements, 2 Deep Up Balaba or Beliba, Dua Lipa is I just call her Dua Lipa. 3 Caloran Beck, 3 Qui-Gon, 3 Liberty, and 2 Yodas. And then in the sideboard, we're rocking 2 The Axe Forgets, 3 Blue Leader, 2 Haymaker, and 3 Consular's Cruiser. So obviously the space is very light in the main deck, other than the Timelies and the Liberties. So the sideboard is mainly built to deal with space decks. The Blue Leaders, the Consular Cruiser, and then the Axe Forgets is also a good thing to slow down some space decks. Yeah, so we'll go through the leader. If you do not know, Qui-Gon Jinn is a cunning heroism leader. He deploys on 6 resources, and he is an action you can exhaust him and use the Force to return a friendly non-leader unit to its owner's hand, and you may play a non-villainy unit that costs less than the return unit from your hand for free. So you can play off-aspect cards with this for free. Also, I didn't go that direction with this, but it is just something to note when you're playing Qui-Gon. And then after he deploys on 6, he is a 4/7, and he gets the same thing as his front side, just on attack, and you do not have to use the Force token at that time. But you can return a friendly non-leader unit and play a non-villainy unit that costs less than the returned unit to your hand for free. So, moving on. The general game plan is early game you want to set up your board to get ahead on credits or resources with Max Rebo Band and the Jedi Consular. Particularly, you want to have one of those out so you can cheat some bigger units out with those 2 effects. Or you can also, I think at the end, I've added, my agenda is slightly wrong. I didn't adjust the agenda before I hit record. That's on me. But we have the end. I have other considerations for other ways you could go with the deck, and the Gonk Droid is one of them. So it would be a third way you could get this early setup. And then you want to start bouncing impactful units to your hand in the middle late game, so you can replay them for a compounding value with strong when played effects and other ambushes and other things of that nature. And then in the end game, we want to replay our bombs, and then we want to win. Obviously, we play to win the game. So the setup, like I said, the Jedi Consular and the Max Rebo Band, these are the two ways we're going to set up our early game to try to get ahead in value. So the Consular, as you know, you can exhaust them and use the Force and play a unit from your hand for 2 less. And then the Max Rebo Band, you create a credit token in the regroup phase. So there are 2 different ways we can make paying for things easier and pay bigger things before our opponents, hopefully. And then the loop. So when we get to our mid to late game, this is kind of the cards that we're looking to see. We want to replay the Amidala really as much as possible. When you start playing her 2 or 3 times a game and you're creating 6 spies, as well as getting value out of her attacking and her ability to stay alive when you have that many things sharing a trade with her, it gets really oppressive. Replaying the Ahsokas is nice because you can nuke their hand pretty well. And then when we get to the real late game, we want to be replaying Liberties, Yodas, and Kellerans as much as possible. So we want to bounce those to play those other ones under us on the cost curve. And then another one that is really good to bounce, or not to bounce, but to replay off a bounce, is the Vernestra. Especially when Qui-Gon is deployed, you can attack, bounce something, play the Vernestra, get the reset from the Force token, so you can stand her up and swing with her. So she'll come in ready a lot of the time if you're playing her off of the Qui-Gon attack a bounce when he is deployed. But when you start replaying Yodas and Liberties, it's really hard for opponents to deal with that, because Yoda, especially if you hit the Amidala once or twice, so you have, say, 3 or 4 spies out, and then if you can hit a Yoda and use the Force, you're dealing like 10 damage to something off his trigger. That when you use the Force, you can deal damage to something for 2 times the amount of units you have in play. You're healing, you're destroying big things. So the replaying Yoda is a really crucial endgame, or the Liberty. These 2 definitely, you want to loop them, bouncing back so you can play Kelleran, bouncing back so you can play Ahsoka, bouncing back so you can play Qui-Gon. So the Liberty and Yoda, ideally, we want to get to as early as possible via credit tokens, or the Consular, or possibly the Gonk, and then start bouncing them for these other units, and then replaying them. So like in the mid game, I'd bounce Amidala to replay like Vernestra or Ahsoka, and then as you get into the depot, you can bounce to replay Amidalas. And then when you get up to that Kelleran, you're going to bounce Kelleran to replay Deepas or to replay Amidalas. And then once you hit that 8 resource ability, then you're replaying these, the Liberty and the Yoda, to replay your other stuff. And then you just, each turn you're playing Yoda and Liberty, Yoda, or Liberty, Yoda, or Liberty. And then, it's a lot of fun. The loop is fun. How we can protect our looping cycle: Beguile is a nice one because we can see what's in our opponent's hand, so we can try to play around it, and we can get rid of troublesome units that our opponents have in play. Protecting the pod is our only event besides Timely. And Beguile can do it too, but protecting the pod is our main way to deal damage to space units to try to clear them. And then Timely, these are basically ways to protect the game against space heavy deck. And then our sideboard, like I said, the Consular's Cruiser, the Blue Leader, and the Axe Frigates are there, again, to deal with space decks, because that's our biggest weakness. And then other considerations to add to the deck, like I said about earlier, is the Gonk Droid is another way to get our cycle moving faster, so we can get those end game loops going. Lieutenant Gorn is another consideration, especially with Lando running around to take control of tokens. And then the Mandalorian is another 8-drop bomb that we can replay. The only thing with the Mandalorian is you don't really want to bounce him too much, because once, like, he'll ambush and he'll clear 2 units, but if you bounce him, then they get that unit back, which could be problematic. So that's why I don't have him in my deck, because just he's not one I really want to bounce. But he is an option as another 8-drop that you could possibly loop if you wanted. But those are other considerations for the deck. And then another look at what it looks like. So I will have the SWODB link in the description. Go out there and go Super Saiyan with this Goku's Lineage Qui-Gon Jinn deck, and go have some fun. We'll see you in the arenas.